What are your most disturbing, unsettling memories from your childhood? I was at a friend's house and we went to a deep creek to catch frogs and turtles. From the top of the bank we spotted a swollen dead deer covered in maggots. My friend's little brother pushed me off of the bank and I landed on the deer. It burst and kind of deflated under me. And I just laid there crying and throwing up until my friend's parents came and got me. They hosed me down in the driveway and tossed me in their pool that they had just chlorinated. Super great. One comment in and I'm done. Friendly stranger stopped me at Disneyland and followed my family around for a while. Asked where we were staying. And I don't know any better as a kid. So I told them. Dude showed up with a friend at the hotel pool waiting for me. I thought to call out to the guy. But my instincts made me hold back. Still don't know if that was a child trafficker to this day. Going over to a friend's house when I was maybe 10 and I caught him and his dad having a loud argument at the garage. I hid behind a nearby trash can and saw the dad pull out a gun and actually shoot his son in the leg. I freaked out and ran home to tell my parents, but nobody believed me until the police and ambulance showed up. It's hard to explain, but I saw the bullet penetrate his leg in what felt like slow motion. It still comes to mind every now and then. Edit. Kid was eventually fine. Never saw the dad again. I don't remember if any arrests were made. High stress situations bring on physiological changes that can also alter your thinking patterns and perceptions of reality. One of the things that can happen is a change in the way we sense the passage of time. People in shootings, stabbings or other violent crimes will often report time slowed down. I suspect that's what happened to you in this case. My mother suddenly screaming in the middle of the night, then dragging my sister and me from our beds into the bathroom and locking the door behind her. Slamming her Bible against the door and turning off the light, then squeezing the two of us to her chest while telling us we all had to pray because a demon was outside, roaming around our apartment, looking to drag us into hell. Hysteria. Tears. Frantic prayers. Bone deep terror. I was 10 or 11. I think. Still get shaky remembering it. Wish I could erase it from my head. Back when I was in high school, my assistant principal had to walk me to my car to grab something from it that I forgot. He seemed totally fine. We were chatting and he told me to have a good afternoon. He shot and killed his wife and killed himself that same night. It bothers me that I didn't pick up on something being wrong. I couldn't have done or said anything. But it still occupies more headspace than I care to admit many years later. Nothing could have been wrong. It's possible something happened to cause him to snap when he got home. I remember me and my brother sitting on the couch crying as we watched our parents yelling at the top of their lungs and chasing each other around the apartment, threatening to kill one another. My dad put a gun to my mom's head and threatened to kill her when I was in the 7th grade. She's a narcissist with borderline personality disorder. She wouldn't stop verbally abusing my father and being relentlessly passive aggressive. Like ever. She would just never ever stop every day for a few months when she was going crazy due to BPD taking over and because she's evil due to narcissistic personality disorder. My father is her enabler and also a narcissist. They were arguing, yelling, screaming, and cursing like usual, but this time was the last straw for my father and he snapped. He put a gun to her head and she just kept screaming over and over again, thinking he was going to pull the trigger, but he didn't. I realize now that she was testing him and taunting him by. She wouldn't apologize and say, "Oh no, I'm sorry, don't kill me." She just kept screaming and in doing so was daring him to kill her, knowing that he wouldn't. It was basically her way of abusing him the worst that she could by saying, "Lol, you loser, I know you won't do it, you need me and I own you, I can do anything I want around here," and she was right. I didn't know this happened until I was 26 years old and was thinking about the day of the screaming bloody murder. It happened on the floor above me and I couldn't see it and was too young to know what happened, but was terrified. I couldn't figure out what could make her scream like that and figured he was holding her down and threatening to beat her or something and she was afraid. I realized when I was older that the one thing that could make her or someone else scream that way was having the gun that he kept in his drawer held to their head. It happened in their bedroom and that's where he kept his gun. That was 17 years ago. By the time I was in college, I gradually started to hate them and stopped talking to or interacting with them. My father spit in my face a few years ago. My mother is trash and so is my father. I want to go to the police to tell them what happened, but the statute of limitations for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon have expired and I have nothing but my word to go on with the cops if I talk to them. There's no evidence it happened. There aren't words to describe the hatred I have for them and the pain I'm in every day. Was home alone once as a young kid. It was summer, so I was outside in my hammock reading Percy Jackson. We didn't have any close neighbors because we lived in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, I'm sitting there closed up in my hammock when I hear a car. Thinking it was my parents getting home, I popped my head out of the hammock and went to greet them. Turned out to be a white van with two middle-aged guys in it. I, being the dumb kid I was, said hello. The guys were kinda shocked and I then asked them if they wanted to talk to my parents. And I motioned to the cars behind our house. Now from the road you can't see, but we have two other cars parked behind our house that were our families, and they must have thought no one was home cause there were no cars in the front. In a way, I don't remember exactly what they said, but they made an excuse and jumped back in their car and zoomed away. Didn't realize how terrified I was till after they left. Never felt the same home alone ever again. I was 7. My family took me to the circus. A man sitting behind me stuck his finger down my pant and forced his finger down my crack. I don't know what to do. I was never prepared for this. I didn't even know what this meant. So I just froze and let him. I think he was trying to find my hole and stick his finger in it because he kept pushing deeper and deeper down my pants. This was about 30 minutes. People would pass by and he pulls his hand out. But when the close was clear, he would slowly try to do it again. It was 30 minutes of hell. Finally my mom got up and asked to come with her to the concession stand to help her carry drinks. I was so relieved. When we came back, I begged my mom to switch seats. That's all I remember. I barely recall the visual parts of that night, but I still vividly remember how it felt and the sound of his voice. My mom was dating this dude and we were living with him. One morning I hear super loud bangs on the door and I run out with my blanket and I hear my mom screaming, "Don't shoot my dogs. They are friendly," as I walked from the hallway to where the front door is. So I'm standing there with my blanket around me and she opens the door and there's a SWAT team pointing their guns at me, yelling for me to drop my blanket on the ground. Then they proceeded to tear the house apart, including my room. Scared the shit out of me. I don't remember the exact details, but my mom said he was an ex-biker gang or something and they were hitting a bunch of members. Edit, for those asking, the dogs, and everyone else, came out fine. Thanks for the concern. Were the dogs okay? And more importantly, are you okay? Making out with a 28-year-old man when I was 12. At the time I was flattered that someone older would be interested in me in that way. But looking back on it now, I'm disgusted and glad it didn't go any further than that. Saw my gym teacher sexually assaulting my middle school crush in the gym office. I was scared and didn't say anything. The gym teacher was caught eventually with another accident. But I still think about her from time to time and it fills me with shame that I was such a coward. You weren't equipped to deal with that. No middle schooler is. Don't blame yourself. You weren't a coward, you were a child. The strange man in my house in the middle of the night. I woke up to pee, something I rarely ever do, and went into the hallway, where I saw the silhouette of a man I did not recognize standing at the top of the steps staring back at me. I'd like to say I screamed, but I just stood there. Thankfully, my father has also woken up, came out, and yelled at me to go back in my room and lock the door. The fact that someone we didn't know could just walk into our house in the middle of the night terrified me. It would be years before I realized if he was just burgling us, he would have stayed downstairs. I hate to think about why he broke in that night. There's an old saying: if they break in during the day, they're after your stuff. If they break in at night, they're after you. Poking a dead body lying in the gutter with a stick. I was too young to understand what I was doing. I don't remember feeling very scared either. I never told my parents. but my older brothers have confirmed to me that it actually did happen. Like an inner city Stand By Me. Where did you live where they're just bodies in the gutter? In the middle of the night I woke up to seeing shadows from the window of people trying to break in. I was scared and tried to go to my parents' room. My mom was making weird noises and I thought maybe she was having asthma attack. My parents wouldn't let me in their room, they were doing the deed. I couldn't sleep hearing all the weird noises. The people never made it to the house but they robbed gym clothes from my dad's car parked outside. Imagine if you'd walked in. Everyone's embarrassed and horrified about being caught. And you're like, yeah, also someone is trying to break into the house. I lived in an apartment in a real bad neighborhood growing up. But one of the worst is when I was about 11 years old and a drunk neighbor tried to flirt with me and ask me to take my clothes off when I was playing on my scooter. And then chased my mom up the stairs with a massive knife when she came out and yelled at him to leave me alone. What the duck? Hope you and your mom are okay. Having to crawl out my bedroom window and run to a neighborhood night to call an ambulance for my mother, who had tried to kill herself because she couldn't handle staying with her abusive ex anymore. I was 10. Even better. Much of a teacher treating my like sheet for missing a bit of school the next day to go see her in the hospital. And yes, the teacher knew the reason. Yeah, no, I had a teacher like that. Humiliated me and didn't allow me to leave and sat and cried through nearly a whole class about the death of my main caretaker. MRS. Phillips. I think about that moment all the time. Extreme anger. I think about the words I would use in a letter to tell her how damaging it was. Or how I would see her on some chance crossing of paths and I'd tell her all the wonderful things I wound up accomplishing and how it's a no way thanks to her. Tell her how it took the military and addiction and earning and losing huge amounts of money in my career before going back to school for something mentally sustainable and how much I had to learn the hard way because I was avoiding touching this bruised area that was formal education. Oof man. That teacher bit kind of triggered me more than when I think of all the abuse and loss I was suffering at home and I will never be able to explain why. Getting up in the middle of the night to get a glass of water to find my 13-year-old big brother with his back pressed to the door, holding a knife. He told me to get down. And the handle started jiggling. And the door shaking. We spent the next 20-30 minutes watching shapes in the dark creep around the yard. I don't really know what bothers me the most. People trying to get into our house. My brother ready to kill someone if they tried. Or the fact that we were alone and I never knew where my mom was at 2 AM while it was happening. I can only hope he'll have as much courage as your brother had if this ever happens to me. My 7th grade teacher was raped and stabbed in her classroom early morning while getting ready for the school day to begin. The rapist ended up being my best friend's next door neighbor. He had borrowed his PlayStation controller before the incident. So he never got it back. In the school? That's just fucking awful. I hate this world and the monsters it creates sometimes. Waking up to the cops shining a light in my face in my upstairs room. Then proceeded to leave. No explanation. Just checking for the slinging slasher. No need to worry about that. When I was about 5. My older cousin's best friend killed someone. My cousin helped him hide for a couple days. Cops got tipped off. Warrant was issued. And with my cousin being a multiple-time felon himself, decided to run as well. At one point, he came to my parents' house to try talking with my dad. My dad didn't want to hear it and threatened to call the cops. Cousin took off, got into a police chase, drove on the wrong side of one of our main roads, hit a car, then flipped his car over a guardrail into the river. I was completely oblivious to everything. I just remember my dad screaming at my cousin. Found out all this stuff later. And it was a huge what the duck moment. My cousin did like 15 years in prison. Edit, spelling.